Well, you know what? We have Edge on live right now. Not only is he a WWE Hall of Famer, but he's also the host of ENC Pod of Awesomeness. He's the E in the ENC. You know what I'm saying, Bully? He's the E in the ENC.
Sometimes he's the E. Sometimes he's the E and the C.
And of course, we're talking about Edge. Edge, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Yep.
Yeah, you could throw an E in there too, and etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Doing good. I've been trying to work it out with you guys. It's now that Beth is a big rock star. She's doing commentary. She's doing women's Royal Rumbles and everything, which leaves me with 2 girls. So Mondays and Fridays, I got a sitter. That's when I can get my workout in and do like anything else, whether it's groceries, go to the bank, wipe my ass. It's my chance to do all of that.
It was funny when we were texting a couple of days ago, and you said, "Hey man, I'm sorry I can only do the show on this day and this day because on this day I got to take the kids to school, and then I got to go do this with the kids, and then I have to cook dinner, and then I have to wipe my ass." I was like, "Man, this guy, it's daddy daycare all over at the Copeland household."
I'm Michael Keaton and Mr. Mom, and it's amazing. It really is. But I always say, I go to film, I get home, and I'm way busier at home than I am at work. No comparison.
Your filming schedule, correct?
Yeah, and I mean the thing with Vikings is such a big production that I'll have 2 days where I film, then 3 days off. So it's not enough time to fly home from Dublin. So for 3 days, I go, okay, I'm essentially a bachelor. What do I do? What did I do before? I don't remember. So I read books and I eat when I want to, and just boring stuff. But
you just said you're a bachelor and you read books while you're overseas.
I know.
I think we've gotten old.
Yeah, we have.
I always thought of Edge like, James Hetfield. He had that long hair, and then, just before load, James Hetfield cuts his hair, and you're like, wait a second, he's still the same cool guy, but it's just strange seeing him with the short hair. It was like the same thing with Edge.
People were weirded out, man, and it was, I just decided, I'd had long hair since the 6th grade. I was that kid. I was always the rocker kid with the biker jacket and the long hair, and that translated to the wrestling character, obviously. But then, it was the night before the Hall of Fame. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to chop it off. Let's just chop it off. And I'd never had short hair in so long. I didn't know, how to style it or, any of that stuff, right? So I looked like Ward Cleaver. It was really bad. And I just, I figured it out after that. But now I've grown it back again for Vikings. So what the hell?
For the longest time, you were like the dirty rock and roll gothic guy who had the creepy sidekick.
Exactly. That's guidelines too. Don't forget the guidelines. That's important.
So listen, what is your level of involvement in the wrestling interest these days? What do you do, if anything?
I don't really do anything. All I try to do is catch up on it when I can, which isn't as often, as I probably should, because I have a podcast and we talk about it, So that's basically, it's let's try and talk about the week that was and get brushed up on our guest if we don't know exactly what's going on. And then that's kind of it. That's my only real involvement is that. It between, being dad and then filming, it eats up so much of the time that it doesn't leave a lot of time left over. We're able to cram in the podcast, but even some weeks it's really difficult because if I'm in Dublin, Jay's in Tampa. When we did Cena, he was in San Diego. So you're looking at an 8-hour time frame where we're all on different times and trying to map it all out. When I'm done offset, when John is done offset, and Jay doesn't do anything. So we're good there.
Dave, if you listen to this conversation really carefully, you're going to see so many Christian and Devon digs. It's not
funny. Before you came on, Bully was talking about WrestleMania at the Astrodome, that huge TLC match, and he talked about that you all got in a room and you're kind of arguing. Do you remember that time?
I do. My memory's not like spot on, but I just remember we all, toward the end of the match, we're trying to figure out the sequence of events and how it should go, kind of thing. And I think the debate was, do we do the spear or do we do the crash and burn through you and Matt through the tables? I think that was the debate, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And it was really the only time where the six of us, and Michael as well, were kind of at a standstill. And it got like heated, but not in a I hate you heated, just in a we care about this, we're passionate, and we want this to be the best it can absolutely be. Because at that point, there was a lot of pressure on us. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and it felt like there was a lot of pressure from the business and the fans, and even the locker room, and from the office to try and outdo what we'd already done, which was ridiculous. So I think that was really kind of the boiling point, I think, where we all kind of went, okay, there's a lot riding on this. We got to make it perfect, which is never possible. But that thing was as perfect as you can possibly get, as close to it anyway.
As a matter of fact, the only person who screwed up in that match was Jeff Hardy, who is the last person that we ever expect to screw up. Because when we would put the matches together, as Edge can tell you, we would always say, okay, what is Jeff going to do? And then we'd book it out backwards because we knew Jeff would have the most spectacular of all the spots. So, all right, what is Crazy Jeff going to do? And then, Edge will do this and I'll do this and Matt will do this. And then when he did the Frogger spot where he was jumping from ladder to ladder, he lost his balance. And I think if you go back and watch, you see all of us just go, because we couldn't believe of all people that he screwed up.
And here was the deal with that. I kind of liked that it did because it made it look less... I don't know, it looked real, and it looked like just ugly and fucked up, Can I say that? Sorry. And he had that idea. I remember that was like, I've always said, you were the idea guy for the Dudleys, Matt was the idea guy for the Hardys, and then Jay and I both kind of pitched in. So it would inevitably be the four of us that kind of sat around and bullet pointed, and that's no knock on Devon and Jeff. They had ideas too, don't get me wrong, but it usually seemed to be the round table was the four of us. And I remember Jeff just saying, yeah, this Frogger deal, and we were like, yeah, you think that'll work? And he's like, no, I got it. And then sure enough,
yep.
That, and do you remember he wanted one other one where he just stood on the top of the ladder and fell backwards through Spike and Rhino? That was the other one. But instead, we were able to talk him into the Swanton. It's like, dude, you got to do a Swanton in this match. This is WrestleMania. That's your move, When you were originally coming up in the business, did you ever see yourself as being a part of a successful tag team who was a part of what we were a part of? I don't think you can imagine that. I had visions, but we were all coming up at the same time, essentially, right? So it's hard to envision when you're a teenager, okay, well, eventually there's going to be this team like this, and this team like this, and this team like this, and the three of us are going to create something that hasn't been created yet. I wouldn't have thought that. I did think, when I was first getting in the business, I was looking at Owen and Davey and thinking, okay, Jay and I could do some good stuff with them, and Furnace and LaFon, and we could do some good stuff with them. And then once we got to WWF, and then, us and the Hardys just got put together. And then it was like, okay, and I've always used this analogy for our three teams. I always said, if the Hardys were the Rock and Roll Express, and if we were the Midnight Express, you guys were the LOD that came in and added that. I've also used the analogy, they got the babyface girl pop. We got the heel reaction. You guys got that guttural guy dude pop,
Yeah,
and that's
we're big with the dudes, yeah.
Well, but That didn't maybe sound the way I meant it. But that reaction.
No, absolutely.
Different reactions when the three of us would come out, and that was what was needed to make that package what it was, and it was lightning in a bottle, man. You can't catch it twice.
I always said, Adam, and tell me if you agree, when Vince came across the three teams, it's not like he decided, I'm going to push these three guys and these three teams, and here's the story that I'm going to run with these three guys. I kind of look at it like he stepped in crap, and he smelled the bottom of his shoe, and he realized that crap smelt like money, and he ran with it. Because I don't think there was ever a definitive plan where they ever sat in a creative meeting and said, okay, what are we going to do with ENC, the Hardys, and the Dudleys? It's kind of just us doing that old school thing of going out there and getting it over on our own.
Well, I know for a fact there was no plans for Jay and I. There was talk at one point of him turning on me for WrestleMania 16 in the triple threat ladder match with us. So that would have killed the ENC part of it right there. So that shows there was no real plan. It just, we were able to talk them into staying together because we felt like we hadn't scratched the surface of what we could do as a team, and then also what the three teams could do together. And that's also looking past all the other teams that were great at that point that had to filter in to keep our three-team rivalry alive, like the Two Cools and the APAs and the Hollies and things like that. So we felt there was just so much more to do. And at that point, look at the card. You had Rock firing on all cylinders. You had Austin. You had, Taker, Kane, Mick, Triple H. There was a lot of people that were clogging up that top area. So I know Jay and I looked at it like, wait a minute, all of us can get noticed here by doing our thing. And we were kind of left untouched too. They just let us run.
Right.
And then you look at it all these years later, and obviously, Bully still has a relationship with Devon. You and Christian doing this podcast together. Did you ever think all these years later you all would still have relationships?
Yeah. I think that no matter what, even if it's man, you don't see somebody for 2-3 years, and as soon as you see, within the six of us, you see each other again. It's like, hey, what's that? Like you haven't missed a day, because there's a bond that's built when you're able to be a part of something that crazy and special and kind of trailblazing and groundbreaking. I hate, sounds like I'm just putting us over, but it was one of those things that, it hasn't been done again. And with the climate of today's the business today, with less risks, I think, for the better being taken and things like that, I don't know if you'll see that again. So it was a really special moment, and no matter what, the six of us know that. And then you throw in Rhino and Spike and Lita, and they're involved too. So it's a special thing that became a pay-per-view. When a match that you were involved in helping create becomes a pay-per-view, I think you've left a mark. So because of that, there's always that bond.
And that's not ego speaking, Dave. That's pride speaking, because of the ability to do that and create something when you know that they weren't creating anything for you, and you went out there and you made it happen. So good stuff. Hey, let's move forward a little bit. So do you remember when they came to you and they told you that they wanted to split you guys off and you go do your own thing?
Yeah, it was probably about a month before Mania 16, and we just, like I said, we didn't feel like we'd scratched the surface, and we thought there was a lot more we could do. So we hadn't really cut a promo. We hadn't had an opportunity to do any of that, and neither of the Hardys, but the Hardys had their style and their thing, and you guys were just creaming people and putting people through tables and everything, and Christian and I were like, wow, what do we do here? Like, there's got to be something. Let us talk. Just let us talk, please. And I think they did like a backstage thing with Coach, with us and the Hardys, and they just let us go. And we were pretty serious for that, but then we got to do some commentary, and that's when we started, kind of interspersing, like we're going to do a run-in and making up our own lingo and things like that. And it was at that point that they said, okay, we're going to keep you guys together, and we want you to take the titles at Mania. And we're like, what? Okay, so we went from breaking up to we're going to win the titles? Okay. I guess this is a thing now. And
But what about post TLC 2? After TLC 2, isn't that when you guys kind of went your separate ways?
Yeah.
How was
yeah.
you and Jay were childhood friends, now working together and having all this success? If you wouldn't mind, kind of bring us into the world of that conversation. Did it ever take place?
We did talk about it, because one of the things that we always wanted to do was get out while you're on top kind of thing. You know what I mean? And not leave that lingering, like, they used to be really good as a team. Like, one of the reasons I think that we can do a podcast or we can do a sketch comedy show is because right at the peak of it, we split up. It wasn't before, like Mania 16 would have been, and we'd laid some groundwork before, got to a point, and then split up. No, we got to do the run. And I think splitting up at the time that we did, we both talked about, we both had aspirations. We both wanted to eventually be singles guys. We both wanted to try and be world champions on our own. Only way to do that is to split up. And we knew it was going to be a work in progress and it was going to be difficult. One of the things that we didn't think about, though, was the difficulty of working each other in our first program after splitting up. Because now I went from this kind of cocky, sarcastic heel to, hey, I'm a babyface. And I was just, treading water, and Jay was the same thing. He essentially kept the same character, and there was no real tweaks. So we really, and then the pressure we put on to have good matches, and we didn't get them where we wanted to get them. So we had the conversation before we split. We said, okay, now's the time. And we got Toronto coming up and off of the King of the Ring and everything. This feels like the right time to do it. And we're really hands-on with being involved in the process of the split, because at one point they wanted Jay to turn on me in my match with Lance at SummerSlam. This isn't the right time. Like, we got Toronto coming. We should try and do it there. So, and that added more jealousy, storyline-wise, from the aspect of I'd won King of the Ring, I'd won the IC title, now Christian turns on me kind of thing. But we wanted to do it. We thought it was the right time. I still think it probably was, but I don't know if people wanted to see E versus C.
One thing that Bully and I have talked a lot about the last 6 months, and especially on today's show, is the future of Daniel Bryan. We don't know if he's cleared, he's not cleared, and Daniel Bryan's been talking publicly about wanting to get back in the ring, and you've had to fight with this. You came to the end of your career when you weren't ready to say goodbye. I mean, what advice would you give somebody like Daniel Bryan?
It's tough. It's, with the conjecture with Paige, too, I get asked, and I'm like, I was in a completely different mindset and a completely different place than either of those two, and those two are in separate places as well. But you look at Daniel Bryan's career, and he had a long Ring of Honor career, the Indies and Japan and all of these places. He was just catching his stride in WWE. He'd been there, maybe 5 years? Mm-hmm. I was there for 15, and got to main event WrestleMania. Got to, if you're looking at like a list, I did everything on the list, like mostly 2 times over, if not more. And what else am I going to do? I had looked at it. My job now was to work guys like Dolph and the younger guys and really try and just help them, talk to them out there, have them take a deep breath and listen, and like, oh, feel it here, you hear them there, they're rolling over here, let's let that, it'll turn into a tsunami, just wait, stuff like that. So that was the only thing I felt I had left to do, and that got cut short. Mentally, I was pretty prepared. The segue was not as bad for me as it is for maybe some, and for probably what Brian's going through. especially the stop start. Like, can he get cleared? Can't he? They told me, you're done. You're medically disqualified. You will never wrestle in the WWE again. What are you going to do? You have to come to terms and grips with that pretty quick, or you're going to be a pretty sad case. So it was, I don't want to say it was easy, but it wasn't as difficult as some may seem. I always get told, your career was shortened. I mean, yeah, I guess, but I had a 20-year career. 5 years I was in the WWE and then 15 there. So it was a good run. And I don't know if Bryan he was just really starting to get his stride there. And I think that part of it getting cut short is what makes it really difficult.
Edge, one of the conversations that we've been having with Dave and a lot of the listeners who are saying that they'd like to see him back, and if we do see him back, they want to see him back in a singles match. Can you please give your opinion? How difficult is it to come back after not being in a ring for 3 years and have a WrestleMania quality match?
Well, that's the thing, is I think people would be disappointed, and I think Bryan would be too, because it's impossible to mimic. There's nothing that mimics it. You can get in the ring, you can train down in NXT, you can take bumps, you can do all of these things. You can run on a treadmill, you can row, you can interval training, you can do all of these things. Nothing, absolutely nothing prepares you for 70,000 people and their energy directed straight at you. There's nothing that will match that adrenaline rush and what that spikes in your body. And then the dangerous part is when it dumps. Because when it dumps, now you're full of lactic acid, and you see it in the UFC all the time. When I came back at the Royal Rumble in 2010, it happened to me. I was in there 5 minutes. 2 minutes in, I was dying. There's no good way to mimic getting where you need to get to, because you can't recreate the energy. There's no possible way to do it. So I'm sure he'd pull it off and he'd find a second wind and all of those things. But a tag would be a lot easier.
Dave, isn't it crazy how we're basically saying the same exact thing?
Doesn't surprise me. You're right.
Because it's the nature of the beast. Getting back in the ring as a pro wrestler, rust sets in very, very quickly, no matter who you are or how great. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but it sets in a week. It always set in for 1 week. If I miss 1 week, that rust would set in.
Wow. Yeah, so 3 years, and then what Edge also brought up is what we were talking about earlier, the adrenaline. You can't replicate that adrenaline rush in a sparring section or in NXT or in a wrestling school or anywhere. So you come out there and there's 70,000 people giving you that rush of energy, and now your endorphin levels are through the roof, and now you got to get in the ring and do it. You take that first bump, and it will rattle your cage just because you haven't felt that high in so long. And I think that's the reservation from the company.
And I think, too, I don't know his case. He talked about it quite in depth on the podcast, but you never really know where the injuries are at. And that plays a huge part into it, because if he goes out there and he takes that first bump and he's seeing stars, which, if you haven't taken a bump in that long, you're going to, whether you're concussed or not. There's a lot of factors in there that, like, me personally, as a dad, having an injury, all of those things, I'd rather not see him do it, but I'm also, not his dad, so he's got to do his own thing, and he knows better than anybody where he's at. But that's just me as a a concerned friend, father, going, oh man, is this the best idea? Or should you just kind of, ride off into the sunset kind of thing?
How would you feel? How would you feel if every doctor in the world, especially the ones that they sent him to, cleared him?
I know it's tough. Yeah, I guess if you had that much overwhelming, kind of medical backing, then yeah, but no, it really is so sticky. For me, it's just the kid thing. Once you have kids, everything
crazy
for me. Like if I've had seizures from concussions, and I think that's the case with him, I might be speaking out of turn, then I'm not coming back. But again, different situation, different career, different set of circumstances. You know what I mean? So, man, I'll just put it this way. If he does come back, I hope it goes amazingly and that, he's perfectly healthy by the time everything is said and done, and that, the audience gets what they want, but more importantly is that he's safe, content, all of those good things.
You mentioned your podcast. Again, it's ENC Pod of Awesomeness. What do you got on tap for the podcast?
Well, we got the 1-year anniversary this week.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Congratulations.
It really flew by. And Jay, he's such a dick. I was like, man, a podcast, really? Like, another one of these things? Like, it doesn't, like, I don't know, Barry Horowitz have one? Like, everybody has a podcast. So, nothing against Barry.
We hear you.
Barry's actually a nice guy. So I just thought, oh man, let's give it a shot. Let's see. It's just what is going to make this one different than the 52,000 other ones. And then I realized, well, it's Jay and I, and it's our chemistry and it's our stupidness and moronity and just what we have that, I don't know of two other people that have the same kind of brain waves that we do. And we think so similar on so many things that I think that was the difference. And we're having fun with it. We don't edit. We don't, say to the guests beforehand, hey, you want to plug anything? As soon as they call, we're rolling and we just start. And I think the kind of free flow of it, people can tell and go, okay, these guys don't have a plan. They're just winging it. And we are. And I think that's kind of what people have enjoyed about it.
Kind of like you and I, Billy.
Yeah. Plus, you have your mascot, the North American balding fatback hipposaurus, Tommy Dreamer.
Whenever we need a punching bag, hey, what are we doing this week?
let's get Tommy naked and throw bologna slices at his butthole.
Wow.
We have poor Tommy, man. Between the TV show and between the pod, it's just like. But it's Tommy. He really is like he's the third member of it. It really is etc. See what I did? ETC.
Yep. Yeah. There you go.
Last question from me, and thank you so much for the time today, because you are a dad, you're a husband, you're a busy man, so we appreciate you carving out this time.
It's fun.
But speaking of the podcast, you mentioned, and we've talked about it too, it looks like we're getting John Cena and Undertaker or American Badass or whatever we're going to get at WrestleMania 34. I know you were outspoken about Cena last Monday on Raw. You thought it was a little kind of goofy, and maybe when it comes to the Undertaker, you need to be a little bit more straightforward and serious.
That's my first take. Having watched it, girls were in bed. I'm like, okay, I'll sit down and see what everybody's talking about. And I watched it. I went, I don't know. I expected it to be a different tone. Now, like I also said, don't get me wrong. Obviously, the delivery of it was spot on. John's a great promo guy. The tone of it just felt. It didn't feel like a Taker WrestleMania pull him out of possible retirement promo. You know what I mean? I don't know how else to explain it. And if I watch it back, maybe I'd feel differently. But usually I go with the gut when I see something the first time, and I turned it off and I don't know. Like, as a fan, I would love to see the match, but I don't know if that promo is going to sell me on the match.
As a fan, would you rather see The Undertaker or the American Badass?
Well, Undertaker, just because I think if he does wrestle, I think that's got to be the last match. I don't see who else there is left to really warrant, Taker coming back to put himself through that for another year. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because as we just talked about, coming back from 3 years, coming back once a year, being a main event match at WrestleMania. I mean, that's a feat in it. He did it last year. He did it with Reigns, but I think he worked the Rumble maybe, but the Rumble's a little different. So that's a huge undertaking, no pun intended. And that's a tough thing. So to keep doing that, I just don't see where you go after wrestling John Cena if you're the Undertaker. Who else is there? Braun maybe, but I don't know.
So let me ask you just one last question before you have to go play with your kids. You will be at WrestleMania, right?
Yes.
Will Christian be at WrestleMania?
Sadly, yes. Yes.
So how about this? How about if you guys aren't busy, you want to induct us into the Hall of Fame?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we could make that happen. I got a nice tux. I don't know about Chris. We can get him into something.
Why don't we see if we can make that happen? Because I think that'll be a lot of fun.
I would think that's got to be your call. Because let's face it, Devon doesn't have a say.
I love it. Oh, I love it. Yeah, I think we need to get all 6 members of the band back together, and I think we need to see you, Jay, me, Devon, and Matt and Jeff on that stage one more time together, because we haven't been in the same spot together for probably 15 years. So let's see if we can make that happen, and I think that'll be giving the people what they truly want to see.
I like it. Well, I'm in. If everybody else is in, I'm in.
Sounds good. Right here on Busted Open, Dave. How do you like that?
Wow, that is breaking news for sure. Thank you so much for the time. ENC, Pod of Awesomeness, and I guess we're going to be seeing him again WrestleMania weekend at the Hall of Fame. Thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you guys. And by the way, congrats on that whole Hall of Fame thing, too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sure we will have a lot of fun. It'll be I have a lot of family coming, and my family is very, very excited, and I think I'm more excited for them than I am for myself.
Yeah.
So it'll be a fun evening. So it'll be good to see you guys, and we'll have 1 or 2 drinks.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
All right.
Thanks, buddy.
WWE Hall of Famer Edge, and man, Bully, that is, I don't think I've ever heard that before on the air, asking to be inducted. That is absolutely fantastic. That is going to be a sight to see at the Hall of Fame on Friday night.
After talking to him, this is the WWE Hall of Fame, and listen, I'm sure a lot of people would think that Heyman would be the guy to induct us into the Hall of Fame, and I get that, but because it is the WWE Hall of Fame and we have such a history with Edge and Christian and Matt and Jeff, I think Edge and Christian would do a great job, and I just want to see them rag on Devon during their speech, because I know that's going to be really funny. So yeah, let's bounce that off WWE, see what to say, and see if we can make it happen.
All right, that would be amazing.